That was awesome. Matt Sandoval is awesome. Free art is for everyone. I love it. Love talking about creativity and art and how it how it's therapy and
Yeah.
fun and just good for you.
Yeah. It was interesting because normally, as I was saying, we talk about art in the way that, it helps to de-stress and self-regulate and all those things. But he actually talks about art as it relates to trauma-informed therapy, which is
Mhm.
taking it to a whole another level. And I love that piece about him. You guys are going to dig this, so make sure you listen in.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
Welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. We are grateful that you're joining us today. And today we are speaking with Matt Sandoval, who is an Arizona native who served as executive leader in human services and nonprofit organizations for over 15 years. He's the chief executive officer at Free Arts for Abused Children of Arizona, which provides trauma-informed art activities through trained adult mentors for children and teens who have experienced the trauma of abuse, neglect, and homelessness. He's a public speaker and trainer on mental health and youth-related topics. He's also the host of Canvas of the Heart, the Free Art podcast. Matt leads the Free Art strategic vision to offer programs in Arizona and the effort to establish free arts as a sector thought leader in child well-being and mentoring through expressive art programming. Formerly, Matt served as the VP of Community Initiatives at the YMCA, focusing on workforce development, alternative education, juvenile justice, and mentoring for teens and young adults. Additionally, he has served as the executive director of an independent living community for adults with developmental disabilities as a clinical therapist. Additionally, this is a long but just very rich introduction, so I am reading all of it. He has also served on several nonprofit and charter school boards for groups that support youth and community development in the greater Phoenix area. Matt holds a master's in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University and a master's of social work from Arizona State University. He's a licensed master social worker with the Arizona Behavioral Health Board of Examiners, and that is quite a resume. So welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me here. And it's just, I guess, hearing my own bio again, the part that stands out to me in the early part of 2025 is the Arizona State University part and how proud we all are of that football team and how they've showed up. And I think in their own way have been this awesome example of what it means to be resilient, even when people have called you the underdogs. I'm happy to be here. Thank you
Yes.
both.
Yes. Oh my God. I got chills just now. We were watching that game last weekend. Marci doesn't watch football. She probably don't know what we're talking about, but it
I
was a
got the
really
vibe.
big deal for ASU.
Yeah, we have the same challenge at Free Arts where there's a lot of creatives that aren't necessarily into sport. So I
Yes.
sometimes have to translate what has
Yes.
occurred here and tell them an important thing might be happening on the first, but it goes over pretty well. But this really got a lot of people excited. So
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Go Sun Devils, right? Forks up,
yeah.
everybody. Okay, so we are super excited to have Matt here today. It seems like we are on a month of art conversations. We just had our good friend Allison Tomei here at the beginning of the month talking about manifesting in art. And Matt brings about a very different discussion, which I'm super excited to talk about. And Matt has a background in social work, but really talks about trauma-informed training, which Marci and I both have also, and resiliency. So I want to I want to talk about that a lot, but Matt, give us a little background on how you came to have this diverse background and now doing the free arts program.
Yeah, one way or another, I've been in the helping professions as a teacher, as a program leader, as a administrator in human services now. And I've had basically my life's vocation be dedicated toward people achieving, maximizing their sense of self, their sense of capability in the world. And in particular, for people that might be vulnerable or had significant obstacles in the way of that. So that's a pretty broad way to encompass a prior history of, education, workforce development, mentoring for adults, mentoring for young people, working with adults with developmental disability. So at the end of the day, the cluster here of what's driven me is how do we best celebrate what it really means to be human? And that is a mixture of all of our thinking and our feeling and our full sense of presence in person. And then also recognize that circumstances, some that we even inherit when we talk about historical traumas, intergenerational challenges, those are things that bring into us that we had very little to do with, if any. Thing to do with. And those all affect our sense of person and our full expression of humanity. And I think I celebrate that realization that work that we do here both provides meaning for those who do it, for those who receive it. We say in the mentoring space, particularly in one-to-one mentoring relationships, that mentoring changes two lives. And I do think we have opportunity to have big impact and an effect on one another if we are mindful about that. And so I have the pleasure, and as many people make different paths in their life and pick perhaps giving back as a hobby, I've made it the main thing over a long period of time and have allowed that to evolve over time. And so that's brought me to free arts over the last 2.5 years, first as the VP of programs. So bringing this sense of like operating and administrating and strategic planning and wanting to have a free arts presence wherever it's needed within our state of Arizona. And then over the last 16 months as the new CEO of free arts to be able to maximize that vision and hopefully model internally what it means to grow, what it means to be human, what it means to accept that, and what it means to have a maturation evolution process that matters to staff, to our mentors, and then ultimately recognizes that we have a very important audience that we're serving, and that's children, teens, and families that have been affected by adversities and traumas like homelessness, by experiences with child welfare. And those are things that are very challenging, and we just believe at the center of things. I believe personally that we have these skills put into us as humans, part of human nature, to be caring and to link to others to help. And that's where I think the magic is.
Yeah, I want
Yes,
to
indeed.
talk to you about that a little bit, going back to sort of this one-on-one work that you do. So on your website, you say art plus mentors equals resilience, which is really interesting calculation.
Yeah.
But I love the way you have put that together. And as you just mentioned, these mentors are getting as much out of this as the mentorees, right? So talk about like how that came to be. Like, where do you find all these mentors? I was looking at your list of mentors. It looks like you have like 100 people, all these different art people doing all kinds of things, including like speaking Chinese, and there's like a million things in there. And I wonder like who came up with this idea?
Sure. Yeah, we've been around for 31 years in Arizona. We were inspired by other free arts in LA. Our founder, Margaret Beresford, is a board certified art therapist, but had a vision for something important. This is important to the recipe of free arts. Art therapies, expressive art therapies in the counseling field are effective and powerful. What free arts is, as an addition to that, is recognizing that there is a place underneath the clinical for the ordinary adult mentor to be trained and to take part in trauma-informed art activities in a group mentoring fashion. So when you look at that formula, if you will, art plus mentors equals resilience, what we're saying is creative expressive arts combined with attuned, caring adult empathy equals greater coping skills for those that we work with, right? And so
Yeah.
each of those components of that very simple equation can be broken down and discussed at length, right? And these
Yeah.
are the things that I like to talk about over time. And so we have professional artists. Those are known in their field. And you're right, there's probably over 40, not all being used at one time, with different mediums. So when people are saying, well, do you do just visual arts? Do you do sound? I mean, if we have an artist and a group that wants to do it, we'll do it. And we believe here that art is the celebration of anything in which we create. So that might mean in a project, you might see spoken word, poetry, creative writing, visual arts, theater. One of our probably signature program events is a theater camp held over 2 weeks at a local theater in Phoenix. So we kind of span the full spectrum of creative expression. And what's essential is there might be people, like in my case, that have some therapeutic training, but that's not required. And nor are we saying we're doing art therapy by the book in a client therapeutic relationship. However, go ahead.
This funny you say this because Marci and I think back to 2017 when we started this. It came around a concept of my kids who went to this fine arts camp here in Northern California. It's called Sugarloaf Arts Camp. And I was telling the group, we were trying to figure out what our purpose work was going to be. And I was telling the group, something happens to my kids when they go away. They go away for this week. They're without phones, they're without everything. They're doing one of those many types of art. It could be piano. There are all these different things they're doing, photography. And they would come back as different little human beings. And I told everyone, this is what I want to do, right? I want to have an impact like that. And that's how we came to have Cour Experience be the nonprofit name for our company. So heartfelt experiential training. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? It's the experience, and people are learning and healing through the experience of all the types of art that you're doing.
Yeah, and we differentiate ourselves slightly in the fact that there are many ways to mentor. And we're not saying one is better or different, but what we want to know is, does it work? Is it effective? And so when we go back to the essential components of being human, we are wired deeply, right, to do things in a synchronous format, as we're like now knocking on wood in the cold and flu season, 5 years away from the initial pandemic and the changes and the stresses that were added by simply not being able to be physically present in the real time with people, and what that caused. I think that grew some awareness of how important that linkage is, and how we are set up that way. And the arts that we do here are all done in person. So we have an embodied approach. And like you're saying, when it's heartfelt, what is it that actually changes? And from the beginning, we knew that there was enthusiasm. People enjoyed it. People enjoyed mentoring here. They became very passionate about it. It is not hard in the general Metro Phoenix area to find somebody in a room and say free arts and be like, oh, I love that place, And I am the #1 ambassador, so I'm fully allowed to brag. But like I was even reading
you are.
a Reddit on Phoenix, and somebody just posted this about 2 months ago. Hey, what are your favorite nonprofits? And I was like, oh, I hope we're in here. Not only were we in here, but we were like the 5th comment. And so people just in that sphere were ready to say, do you know about free arts? You should consider, getting involved in them in one way or another. And so I think that what you saw with your family is the result, and we need to add rigor from time to time on a research level evaluation format and go, great, does it work? Is this real? And what is it that actually does cause these changes? And are these the changes we want? So when we think about the opportunity to be aligned in person, to use our full body, and that we are wired to do important things one-to-one or one to small groups, when we think about how we've clustered all of our society, it mirrors that. And so having our programs take the shape they do mimics that. We don't do one-to-one mentoring, we do one to group. So that is an important feature that we do here that I do think has some important differences, because it's still responding to a central obstacle. The vulnerable audience that we're dealing with has kind of been cut off by their support network, or they've lacked one for a long period of time. And so building that is important to us.
Hey, we just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about something very exciting that Debbie and I and our team have been working on for literally years. And that is our Cour Tools app, which is now available at the Google Play Store and at the Apple Store. And you can sign up for it now, and you will get access to all the tools we've been talking about on the podcast.
And if you're an early adopter of Cour Tools, you can get a VIP price for $49 for a lifetime. That's
Lifetime.
right.
Buy it once, and we'll keep updating it too.
Yes. So we're super excited about this. Go to Apple Store, go to Google Play, and purchase it now.
Cour Tools, COUR, capital TOOLS.
Go get it. I was reading that in Arizona. We're in California. I'm sure our number's probably twice this, but it says in Arizona, I think I got this from your website, more than 78,000 kids experience trauma, abuse, neglect, and homelessness. It says per year.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a data point from Kids Count. So that's done through surveys, if it's the right count, of students themselves. So this is broader than just child welfare. This is self-reporting information.
Wow.
And so what we partner with agencies where there is involvement, either with a shelter environment or with child welfare, meaning the Department of Child Safety in Arizona.
Yeah.
And we work with group homes. And so we know this has happened. That's what's caused their entrance into that provider. That's the way we work with the people that we meet. But when you think about the issue around trauma and adversity, and it's important to separate them, because all traumas are adversities, but not all adversities are traumatic, right? And we have to respect that depending on how often it happened, what happened, how long it happened, and our ability to cope in that moment kind of shifts our response. This is not to put blame on those who receive or experience more symptoms. These are all parts of just knowing how we arrived into the place that we're at in order to best serve. And so we know on that broad scale that the adversity is at least that. And when you talk about with adults, their own efforts to grow past things that happened to them, I don't think there's anyone in any space that doesn't think about something that was hurtful, that was isolating, that was physically challenging, emotionally challenging, that affected them. And often I think a key to wise living is recognizing what those things are, how they show up for you now, so you could best navigate. Because I think what we often see, and it's sometimes done in the viral video, is people who don't have that awareness yet are easily triggered by something that actually was harmful, right? And their response in that context makes a lot of sense. But they've not been given the opportunity to grow through that and develop skills that can help cope when those feelings, as natural and normal as they are, appear.
Just to express themselves, right? So it's a different way. Like everyone thinks, oh, well, if there's trauma or whatever, like you need to have like sit one-on-one, need to have a therapist, you need to have a psychologist, you need to have all those things. But I think it's really remarkable now what we've learned about the fact that art can do so much and allow people to express themselves in a way that they would not have otherwise. That maybe they just flat out can't communicate, but they could paint something, they could make a mural about something, they could let it out that way.
And many of our art activities, almost all of them by design, are neutral. They might be about positive concepts or things I aspire to, rather than today we're going to talk about the hard thing that happened to you. We want to be very careful. That's a responsive, trauma responsive method. Is we are here recognizing that you're starting at some place. We hope this feels recreational. We hope that it feels fun. We hope that it is invigorating to you. And we also hope that there's a healthy amount of challenge that, and I have to say, as the leader of this org, I am not going to be the artist that has a gallery exhibit. Now, there are other staff members, certainly our art professionals, teaching artists will have those opportunities.
That was my next question.
Nobody's coming to see my painting, right? But what's helpful in that, right, is to realize that even when we do the art that is challenging to us, it has something to teach us. Going toward that that opportunity to express, because all the human things come up, right, for us, which is like comparison. I'm drawing and I look over and I'm over here with a stick figure and my colleague's doing the Mona Lisa over there. And it can be really challenging to go like, I don't measure up. And how many times does that happen in our life, that we are comparing in a way that's unhealthy? And we've had some, social I guess impulses is one way to put it, social media being one of them, that have really magnified that comparison effect, that it's really easy to compare yourself, full knowledge of everything you're good and bad at, or feel self-conscious of, versus this curated version of somebody online that you feel like you don't measure up to.
That's so important.
And art puts us in that place where we're all cooperating together. And for many of the young people we're working with, they can start there. And some have every reason to doubt whether this is a safe experience or a safe environment. So safety starts with, entry-level activities that we can do that feel good. And often, and way more often in the case than the opposite, somebody gradually, tiptoes all the way into full involvement because the arts is accessible. And in a beautiful way, it helps us discover some things that are hidden to us, even if they're our own strengths.
I think this idea of art for art's sake is not talked about as enough, is not understood in society. We've commoditized it, we've capitalized it, we've made like the good artists, the ones who are worthy because you would buy their product, because it would be in an exhibit, because it would be in a museum. And that's not what we're talking about here at all. We're talking about creativity and expression for expression's sake, for art's sake, for your upliftment. And it goes with this idea where people will say, well, I'm not creative, or I'm not this, I'm not good at art. We gotta just shift those paradigms. It's not about being good at art, and everybody's creative. When we create, we're creative. And so this idea that you get to have this experience and there doesn't need to be any judgment. And that is a challenge, because like you say, you see what other people are doing, but it's not about anyone else. It's about this experience that you're creating. And then if you'll allow yourself, has this power to shift things for you. And that, I just think, we don't talk about that enough. That's not what's modeled in society for us.
And it's not modeled, and it can even be challenged even in the right spaces where you could be around it. I've never had my art challenged by a professional artist. Like, they're just glad you're creating, right? That's not been the situation. It's often, it's often yourself or somebody who hasn't really struggled with their own art in a way to realize, ooh, the journey's happening over here, let me support it. But one of our mantras that's important, to your point, Marci, is that there are no mistakes in. And that needs to be said often, even in our office space, because people work themselves all the way up to that line where, like, I made a mistake, I did something silly, or it's not as ideal, or it's not as pretty. And that comparison, this mythical standard they're trying to achieve, is popping out to them. And part of that no mistakes in art is also an embracing of what I hope is psychological flexibility, which is, can I take what has happened here and mold it in a different way? And so, is my
resilience.
Is my drawing asymmetrical? Cool. Let's take that perspective and turn that into something that we are using, rather than hoping that you're coming out with a perfectly measured moment. And there are art forms that celebrate the quirks, the cracks, the different edges.
Absolutely.
And it's art that welcomes that when, often we're being pressed into a mold that feels real foreign to us.
So I noticed in some of your podcasts that you also use some of the tools that Marci and I use. So Marci's the master EFT girl. I know that you just recently did some work around EFT. So we use all of those tools, including the art piece. So how do you incorporate some of those tools within your free arts program?
Yeah, when we're talking about tools, we talk about this very specifically in training and over time, where we think about, there's a toolbox that our mentors have. And the very first tool that we're really able to use and talk about, and this is an important subject for everyone, is really how to recognize empathy and support it as it occurs, because empathy is a choice. And often the choice to not empathize is frankly quicker and easier. It is definitely a way to cope with hard situations, or ones that you become aware of, that it's just much easier to shut all of this down than it is to actually embrace what's in front of us. And so we believe that inside that is an empathy is the significant tool. And underneath it is a recognition of emotion as neutral. And we have a pattern throughout culture and societies to privilege some emotions over another. And to say that some are good and some are bad. And if I even ask, I've done workshops where I'm talking about this, and then I'll ask people, write a good emotion, write a bad one, and they'll still do it.
Right.
And it's like, see how powerful it is? Like, you weren't here for the
Oh,
previous 35 minutes.
We're so conditioned.
And every now and then, like I did this talk with a bunch of school counselors and MSWs, and I saw the pens go down like, this is a trick question, right? Because we're so wired, you need the insight, the self-awareness that others can guide to say that like there is an opportunity to realize this emotion, whether feeling pleasant or unpleasant, is here to tell me important things about this moment and about my life. And what do they want me to tell? What's the message they want to tell me? And so that might mean, this feels good because I've been lonely. This feels bad because I am lonely. What do I want to do with loneliness? And we see this shift as people grow, right? How do toddlers express emotion? The same way, right? There's howling and screaming, frustration, anger, hungry, they all sound the same. And then we sometimes have big body toddlers who do the same kind of thing, right? They still express their frustrations in only very narrow lanes.
Big body toddlers.
Yeah.
I like that.
And there are moments where that's my own self-talk in a moment that's really challenging, which is like, I don't really like the way they're coming at this. This is a big body toddler we got going on over here. Sometimes we're the big body toddler, and it's helpful to go like, I need the break. Am I hangry? And should I go take a nap and have a sandwich? And then we gotta have this conversation. So back to the toolkit, as you're asking, is empathy, our presence, our support. We even help people understand the difference between praise and encouragement, right? Because praise can sometimes be about the product. You have a beautiful painting versus you gave a great effort. And there's room for both. But if we only do the celebration of the product, and this is where I think I've not suffered criticism about my art from artists, because they understand process. They understand when you do the process, what happens is what happens. And there's a role of both of those in the programs that we have, because we have weekly standalone art activities and a program called Weekly Mentor Program, where today is all about the process of making this thing. And it can be led by people who have no artistic background, because it comes with the equipment, with the supplies and the instructions. And this is about today in this moment. We also have, even if you were to take a tour of our facility, exhibition level mixed media collage that was done with trained artists with the Phoenix Art Museum that was inspired by other professional art. And that itself is more product-based. At the beginning, people were told that we're going to participate. This would likely be shown. Is this something that's important to you? And this is not typical. We don't keep children's art. We don't sell children's art. It belongs to them. But we do have murals and public displays from time to time, and we will set up those circumstances such that there can be a way that that person keeps their artwork, and we're able to show and tell a little bit about the impact here. And so
tell your story.
Yeah, so we have to guard a lot of privacy and confidentiality, but art is another way to say that this change in this person occurred, right? The painting behind me, for those watching, and I know that some are only listening, so I'll just describe it for you. But there's a painting behind me that says Building Hope, and it's like a drawn crane that's building a building. And this is actually the second piece of two. So we have an young adult that did a similar piece as I think a middle schooler. And then we wanted to use a picture of that piece in a chapter that was going to be submitted to an anthology as kind of proof of the kind of things that people do here. And they said, yes, I'll be happy to do that as long as I can redo it. And so as a young adult, they came and redid the piece. And so we can see in a different office is the childlike version, and then this one is the young adult version. And it was a really cool story about how, looking at this art piece, it tells the story of our own growth and change over time. And it was really wise of that person to be able to recognize that about themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Art truly heals for sure. I'm a believer. But hey, so tell us how people can find out about you. I feel like we're a little bit short on time. And also, like, I'm curious how people could become a mentor for
Yeah.
free arts in Arizona.
First way to get more information about us and to find out anything else I'm about to share is our website, freeartsaz.org, where you can also get involved there as a mentor. That will start the process there. We have a multi-layer process, orientation, followed by a full day training, followed by an interview. We do this on purpose to guard child safety in general, but also to make sure it's a fit for the adult. And we also know that when there's a little more barrier to entry, people are more invested. So if it's a little harder to get into something, people are more willing to stay and to hang. That's just human nature. So we tend to stick with things that took a little effort to get into. So what I would say is really a fabulous thing about volunteering at Free Arts as a mentor is that it's scalable to your time. So if you came and said, I have 6 Saturdays, I can help at a project day at a arts and culture partner, like a museum. Great, we'll have it. If you said, I'm retired and I can do 12 weeks twice a year, there's a spot for you. So there are places where people can come in and out based on the busyness of their lives, which for some mentoring models, a 1-to-1 1-year minimum match feels a little daunting. And so that's not quite the level of requirement, but we do have a lot of training coming into that. So that's volunteering, freeartsaz.org. And then you can follow us on our podcast, Canvas of the Heart, where we talk about the work in similar ways of this conversation. And we are progressively spending more time talking with other experts in related work and our own art and mentors. So as we're recording this, it's January, which is National Mentoring Month. There'll be a special episode about 2 of our mentors talking about their impact. And you could accuse me of coaching them, but I didn't, because they immediately talk about what this has meant to them. And that's okay. Yeah, we don't get involved in mentoring. We coach this at Free Arts. We have to be present for the person, the participant. We're not here to solve our own mental health needs, but we are full people and we have our own moments of being triggered by the circumstance, and we need to do self-care and be careful about that. But we're here for them. Can we be here for them? But that doesn't mean there isn't some gain in meaning and perspective in our life by being a mentor.
Absolutely.
And the last thing very quickly I'd like to mention is that we have an annual training conference every year. We are doing Resilient Hearts as our theme this year, August 16th, 2025 in Scottsdale. It's a 1-day training that helps us tie in all the fabulous features of Free Arts with a specific eye on what it takes to work with our target population, children, teens, young adults, those who experience the traumas of abuse, neglect, and homelessness. But as you're talking about, art heals, all these other kinds of experiences. We know that this touches on other lanes of helping. So educators, other human services, social workers, this is if you have a passion for the arts and you're in our area, we'd love to see you there. So that's coming well in advance, but you'll find out more details on our website.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Is in your area, is it the state of Arizona? Is it really just the greater Phoenix area?
Yeah, for the most of the 31 years, the greater Phoenix area, Maricopa County, which is a very large county.
Yes.
You could drive about 2 hours and still be in Maricopa County. So for those of you in
I've
areas with more counties, that's what we're like here. But we've recently started to work more in Tucson, Pima County, and a little bit into Prescott, Yavapai with different models. So we are doing what we can to do outreach and understand how best to kind of spur this forward. I would say that to say also we want to partner within Arizona, but we are happy to consult, coach, teach anyone outside of Arizona who wants to mimic what we're doing, wants to understand the secret sauce about why this is important. That would be fine for you to reach out and contact us to talk about that.
Yeah. That's great.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Matt.
This has been awesome.
Great conversation. Love the work you're doing.
Thank you so much for your support and the opportunity to share about it. And I appreciate the work you're doing. And I've done my own kind of tour down the playlist of yours. And I would suggest that people do that, continue to do that. There's great content here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we're going to talk again.
Yes.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
Today's journaling prompt is I am. It's open intentionally. So you can fill in whatever comes to you after the words, I am. Just start writing and see what happens. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Cour Experience, who also creates and distributes Cour tools. You can find us at courexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Cour Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.